Hello everyone and welcome to the Unit 3, which is Text Functions in Excel. This is the Unit 3 of the Advanced Excel course. Now I work with text in Excel all the time, so these functions are really useful for me. I work with it all the time because it's generated as part of reports out of systems, for example, payroll, AP, financial systems. It's also a great way of dealing and sorting with data. For example, I might be working with a CRM and we want to match customers from one database with another database. So we might be looking at customer names, customer emails, addresses and all kinds of things. So I tend to work with this all the time. So these functions are really important. So basically what text functions are the functions that only apply to text formatted inputs. For example, we've got some names over here. And I'm just going to be showing you some of the key functions that we're going to be used when we do deal with text. Now the first one we're going to go through is the proper function. So the proper function basically is a way of capitalizing the first letter of each word in a text series. So here we have an example of some example text over here. So we've got some names and text over here. So this one's got all lowercase in this one. This one's all lowercase. This one's got lowercase mixed in with some uppercase in the wrong areas. This one's all lowercase and this one's all uppercase. So in each of these different scenarios, what we can do is we can use the formula called proper, and it's fairly simple to use. You just type equals proper and then the reference input cell. And you can see what's going to happen in each of these situations. So it's going to be converted from all lowercase to uppercase in the first and last name. It's going to be all lowercase to uppercase in first letter. Same here as well. So it's actually correcting all those capitalized letters in the wrong areas. And where it's been capitalized in every single area, it's only going to capitalize the first text there. So that's if you want to capitalize it, for example, in a letter or something else. What about if we want to make everything capitalized, or vice versa? And we might need this for a title of a report, or perhaps to be consistent with text in another report, or maybe we just want to fix all of this. So we've got text written in a funny way and we just want to show it written in uppercase. Then we'd use the upper formula. So again, quite simple. You just type equals upper and then reference the cell input in between your brackets, and you'll see what's happening over here is this is all lowercase has been all converted to uppercase, and so forth. In instances where you've got random uppercases throughout it, the entire text has been converted to uppercase, and numerals are going to stay as numerals. So the opposite formula to this is the lower, and this is when we want all of our text to be in the lower case. So as you can see, Alan Jones has been capitalized, Bob Smith was capitalized and is now in lowercase, and so forth. So what about a situation? So now that we know the three key formulas for correcting capitalization in text, how do we go from a situation where something is all capitalized, like Alan Jones here, and we want to get that just capitalized in the first letter and of each word? So I want to make everything lowercase except for the first letter. So we can use that. We can achieve this with a combination of different formulas. So first of all, what we can do is in the lowercase is we can make it lowercase as a first step. So we're going to use the formula equals lower and select a cell. So now everything is lower. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a proper formula based on that. Equals proper. So now we've gone through two steps, and of course you can just copy your data down from your email, whatever your data source is, and just drag down those formulas, and now you can effectively correct that. Now, a few instances where you may want to use this could be where you're working in a different program altogether. For example, you're writing an email and you've copied and pasted text from, say, your payroll system. Now, unfortunately, all of the employees are coming out in capitalized letter, what we can do is we can copy and paste that table into Excel or import it another way and then convert it using formulas, and then we can copy and paste this back into the other program you're using, for example, your Outlook email, and then all of the text will be corrected. So that's correcting the different upper, lower cases of words. The next thing that we're going to be discussing is how to actually combine different elements of words. So we're going to do that through two ways. So one through the AND function and the other is through the concatenate. They really do the exact same thing. One's just a little bit simpler than the other. So let's focus on the concatenate formula first. Now, you'll often come across a situation, usually with first names and last names, that's the most common scenario, where we want to combine the two. So you might have a data output from your CRM or your payroll system, and you've got all your employees or your individuals' names down here. We've got first name and then last name, and we may even have middle name as well. But what we probably want to do is also have their full name, and we may not always have been provided this. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the concatenate formula. And the way the concatenate formula works is you type equals concatenate, and then you put, first of all the series of text that you want to combine. So number one is text 1, and then comma text 2. And if you press enter, your text will be combined like this. So notice how there's no space in this. That's because we didn't specify to include a space. It's something that you need to do. Excel doesn't know to do that automatically. So the way we add in a space is to add in another field. So as you can see in this formula over here, that there in text number 2 we've actually added in the space. Now you can't just type in the letter space. So you can't just go space. You can't quite see it there, but what happens is Excel doesn't actually recognize that as a field. So notice how I've got a space there. So all it looks like is exactly the same as what it looks like up here, because that's not how you type text in Excel, which we would have gone through in the beginners and the intermediate course in Excel. Whenever you want to include text in an Excel function, you need to include those apostrophes, like so. And now your Excel is going to have a space in between, and the name is going to look like that as well. Now we could also take it one step further, and we could add in an email address. So let's say we want them all to have the last email address at hotmail.com. What we could do is just type it into a cell somewhere, and making sure that we've got where it recognizes it as text. Okay. So when we're typing it into cell, all we need is just this little dash like that instead of the apostrophes. And then I'm just going to format it like these other cells so we know it's an input cell. Okay. So the other thing we're going to do now is we're going to correct this one, and we're going to add in a space, comma, and then we're going to add in another field and just link it to this cell here and lock that so it doesn't move. And then we can drag this down, and now everyone's going to have Alan space, first name space, last name at hotmail.com. If we want to change this to a dot, we can do that as well. We just delete the space and put that as a dot. Then we have alan.jones at hotmail.com. So we can achieve the same thing with an even shorter formula, which is the AND function. So you'll notice it's the same example down here, but instead of typing equals concatenate bracket text 1, comma, text 2, what we can just do is text 1 and text 2. It's a little bit quicker to use. I prefer to do this just because of the time savings. So we can do Alan and Jones, or we can do Alan, and add another and in there, and then we have Alan and Jones. Or we could do it the other way and just add in one more and then link it to the cell up the top. And now we have a concatenated text in a much quicker way. We can also change this to go back to a full dot, and then there we go. So there's two ways of combining text fields using concatenate and. The next formula we're going to go through is to extract text from a certain portion of a field. Now this is important where we only want to extract a certain portion of text. For example, in an email address, we may only want to extract the section of text before an and, at symbol, or we may, for a first name, we may only want to extract the first name from their full name, and so forth. So one way we can do this is using the left and right text functions. So what these do is they take the text that represents an X number of characters to the left-hand side. For example, if we wanted to do left 1, it's going to retrieve just this letter here. If we want to do left 2, and this text, it's going to return a L. And if we want to do 6 letters of this one, it's going to return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's going to return the first 6 letters. And with this mixed numbers and letters, it's going to return all of these characters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, ABC1. So the way the formula works is you just type equals left, you select the text that you want, and then you choose the number of characters. So you can either type it or you can link it into a cell, and that's going to return the number of characters from that text from the left-hand side. So the alternative is if we want to extract text from the right-hand side. Instead of left formula, surprisingly, we are going to use the right formula. Now all this is going to do is extract the same number of letters from the right-hand side. So if we drag this down, you'll see that it's pulling the ES, the NES, and the 6 letters from here, RDIF, and so forth. So fairly straightforward. The only problem with this is you need to actually specify the number of characters. For what example, what if we want to pull out the last name of all of our characters in a particular field, but the number of characters in a last name keeps on changing? For example, we may have some Limbs, which is 3 letters, and then Peters, which is 5 letters, and so forth. So to do that, we could use a flash fill, as we went through in the beginners and intermediate course, or we could use these formulas for a more advanced way. So we can actually combine this with a formula called the find function. And what the find function does is it actually looks for a certain character. So what we can do is say extract all the text before this certain character. So this is a clever trick. How it works is we use the find function to look for a certain text. In this case, we want to find where the space is. So I've just gone apostrophe space apostrophe comma, and then within text I'm going to select this one here, and then I'm going to end that function. So basically what this tells me is that, actually I'm going to move it over here. What this tells me is that the space is in the 5th letter of this text here, the space is in the 4th letter of this text here, and the space is in the 6th letter of this text here. So we can actually use that to create a dynamic left formula, because if the space is in the 5th character for Alan, it means that Alan's name is 5 minus 1. If the space is the 5th character, then his name is the other 4 components. So we can actually use this to figure out, to extract the X number of characters to the left-hand side. So if I say minus 1, this is the number of letters in the first name of Alan. So what we can do now is go equals left, okay, and then left requires us to select the text, so C27, comma, and then our find function is there. Got one too many brackets. And now it's a dynamic formula which pulls out the first name of each of these, regardless of how many letters. Okay, what if you want to find out the last name of each of the characters in a dynamic way? So it's a little bit trickier because we need to add in another step. We can't just say the number of letters after the space, because there's no quick formula to doing that in the same way. So how we're going to do this is through a simple mathematical formula. If we can figure out how long the total text is, how many letters are in this, for example, Alan Jones has 10, there's 4 in Alan, there's 1 in the space, and there's 5 in Jones, so 10 letters. If we can figure out where the space is, which we did before, we figured out that it was in the 5th one, we can then figure out that his last name is 5 letters, or 5 characters long. And we can figure that out by saying it's the length minus the location of the space. And then we can combine that with a right function equals right text 5, like that. So we can pull out their name. So how do we figure out the length of the total name? Well, we can use a formula called len, L-E-N. So if we go L-E-N, which is short for length, I'm not sure why they didn't type in the exact same word for the formula, considering they had enough space to write concatenate as a formula, but needless to say, we've got len as a formula. So we select the text, here it is there. So that's how we know our text over here has 10 characters in it. Now in terms of finding the space, I taught you the formula that we need to know for that, which is find. We simply find in quotations mark space in this character over here. So we know it's in the 5th one. Now the last name length, simple formula, length minus space equals 5, and then we can use the right formula over here. So simple maths, let's drag this down and see if this works. So we've got Jones, Smith, and Williams, even though they're all different lengths. So that's a cool little trick to pull out the first name and last name from different fields of text. Okay, so what about if we want to pull out text in the middle? So we know how to do the beginning, we know how to do the end. What about the middle? So there's a formula we can use, and it's called mid. Now it's not as dynamic as, say, the left and right, because we can actually figure out what the first name and last name is, no matter how long the characters are. With the mid formula, it is a little bit more prescriptive. You do need to know how many letters in it starts and how many letters from the right hand side does it end. So that generally requires your data to be in the same format and so forth. Otherwise we may need to do it a different way. So here's some examples here. We've got text in here, A, B, C, D, E, D, F. And what we want to pull out is text in the middle of a string. Now what constitutes the middle of the string is defined by you. So for example, the middle could actually be these three, because you may constitute the starting position as 0, or the first character, and the ending position as 3. So even though it's not the middle in your understanding of what the middle is, if you define what the start and end point is and they end up being the first 3 characters, that still constitutes the middle to Excel. So the formula is middle C4, D4, E4. Now if we look at this, the first thing is the text. So we select the text that we want to extract data from. The next one is, which character do we want to start pulling from? So in this case, we want to pull from the first letter. And then the next is, how many characters do we want to pull? So we want to pull 3 characters, so we're going to start off with A, and then we're going to pull 3, 1, 2, 3. So we're going to go A, B, C. Same with this one over here. So we're going to look at this text, and we're going to go from the second letter, which is B, and then we're going to go 3 characters. So we can go 1, 2, 3. There's the 3 characters. And then this one over here, so starting position is the 5th letter, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's the E. We're going to start off with the E, and we're going to pull 2 characters, so we're going to go 1, 2. Okay, so that's basically how it works. Here's a more useful application. So we want to pull out the size, and because it is in the same format of data in each time, we can pull out this data fairly easily. Now notice how some of the text is a different length to the others. So this is an alternative use of the mid function to extract what we did with the right function, using a few different formulas in there. So this way might be even a little bit simpler to use. So let's have a look. So we know that the text is always having the same format in that it's always item size, item space size, colon space, and then text that we want to extract, which is this. So that's the same for all of them. So that's the first check. If the format was different at the beginning, we wouldn't be able to use this formula because it relies on the extracting text to start in the same position every single time. So let's have a look. So the text we're pulling from is C12, yep, and it's going to start from character 12, which is right here. So that's the reason why we can use this formula. And then the number of text that we want to extract is 99. So because it's dynamic, it's going to basically, as long as this text here is less than 99 characters, it's going to pull the same text every single time. So it doesn't matter if it's 5 characters, 6 characters, or 5 characters, it's going to pull it out like this. But you'll notice that this formula is a lot shorter than the right formula we used with the len and the find function in there. Okay, so let's look at another example over here. So in this example, we want to pull out the branch ID, and we know that the branch ID, because it follows the same format every single time, we should be able to pull it out from the 5th and 6th position. So we're going to select the text. We'll start from 5, and we're going to select 2 cells, 2 characters in length, because we know that this is the branch ID in here, and we know that's the 5th letter, and this is always 2. So we can use the mid function to pull out the CF, WA, and P postal regions. Okay, so now we've got a much trickier example down the bottom where we want to pull the middle text in here, but it's a dynamic length. So sometimes it's 3 characters, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 5. All we know is that it's always separated by these 2 brackets. Now, there's a few different ways we could do this. We could do it. We could do a text to columns conversion. That's probably going to be the easiest one, and just set the delimited width as an other, being this one here. So that works pretty well. So that's probably what I'd recommend you do. But let's try and do this from a formula perspective. There we go. That's everything we need to do. But let's do this from a formula perspective, just so we understand the formulas as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the mid function as well, but we're going to combine it with a find function. So we know how the mid function works. It's start position, how many characters, and then that's the data we pull from. Okay, so let's separate this out so it's a little bit easier to understand. Okay, so the starting position is basically where there is a slash, but then we're going to +1 because we want it to start from this letter over here, not from the slash. So what we can do is we can do the find function. So we can go find comma slash comma. Remember, we need the comma because we're typing in text. And then we're going to comma within text. We want to look for it in here. Now, are we done? No, because the 4th character is this one. We also need to add a +1 to our formula. There we go. So we've got our start position. Pretty straightforward. Now, the next one is how many characters. So the next thing that we need to do, to figure out this, which is 3, the way we're going to do it is we're going to figure out the location of this slash here, and then we're going to minus from the location of this slash here. So to do that, we're going to have to break this up again. So I'm going to bring this up here so we remember what this relates to. Second slash. So we're going to go equals find text. We're going to look for this text within here. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is see in the formula how it says square bracket start number. Because what this is looking for is it's going to find the first slash. It's going to find this one here. We can actually use this function over here. And what this does is it means you only start the search after a certain number or a cell reference. So what we actually have to do is repeat this because we only want it to find the first slash in here after the start number being the location of the first slash. So we're going to refine this all over again. So I'm just going to copy and paste this over here, and then done. Okay, so what you'll see is the second slash is 4 characters, 1, 2, 3, 4 after the first slash. Okay, so the only thing that we need to do now is just, now we'll also need to add in this +1 as well to account for the starting position. But if you just double check it, the second slash should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, that works. Let's just drag it down to make sure it's working for the other ones as well. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yep, that works. And this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That works as well. So then the only other thing that we need to do is figure out the location of the first slash, and then we can minus the 2, and that will give us the number of characters. So the location of the slash is, well, we can just copy across this formula over here and go equals, and then let's just make sure that we've got this right. Okay, yep. So, but we also need to minus 1 from this equation, because if you think about it, if you're taking the 8th character and minusing it from the 4th character, you're going to get 4. But in reality, we only want the 3 letters in between it, right? So we actually have to minus 1 as well. So, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put these together, and we're going to go that minus that. Oops, sorry, this should be +1. Oh. Sorry, the minus should be over here. So it's this minus that. That gets us to 4 minus 1. So this is our formula now. So length. Okay. So let's just drag these down and make sure that this works. So that one's 2. Yep, that works. Let's drag this down, and this one should be 5. Yep, that works. Okay, so now let's group these together. And now we have our mid string. So we're going to go equals mid text starting position, comma, length. There we go. STC FC north. And we have a working formula where we can just pull out the middle text no matter what is in between it. Now, as I mentioned before, it's probably better to do this with the text to columns feature, but at least you now know the more advanced way, which is using formulas. Okay, so let's talk about the substitute formula. Now, this is a formulaic way of doing the Control F replace function that we talked about in the beginners and intermediate course, except we're doing it with a formula. Now, there are a couple of instances where it may be relevant. For example, you may want to substitute a GL code from your accounting ledger over here, but you want to keep your original GL intact and adding in, an additional changed code or something like that. So there are a couple of instances where it might be relevant to use a substitute formula. Otherwise, in most instances, you can just do it a lot quicker and easier with the Control F and replace all. But it is good to be aware of this in case a situation does arise where it would be quicker and easier and more effective to use the substitute formula. So the way it works is we type in substitute, and we select the text that we want to replace. Then we select the old text, i.e. the field in find, and then we type in the new text, i.e. the field in replace. So in this instance, we want to replace anything that says CD with the word hello, and it's going to change this to AB hello EF. We could change this to CD and it'll go back to it, or we could go to PL and it'll put in whatever you want and it'll do live. You could also change an and to an ampersand, and so forth. So fairly straightforward. You could use it as a substitute for upper, lower, and proper, in that you can substitute lowercase with uppercase and so forth. So it's just another way of doing it, potentially. I don't think we need to go into that level of detail. Okay, so now we're going to look at the T formula, and this is a way of us checking whether a field is actually text formatted or not. In the beginners and intermediate course, we went through how different formats can make formulas, and Excel treat things in different ways. For example, a percentage converting to a number, it might actually convert it times 100 and so forth. So making sure we have the right format is really important. Excel it might look like a number, but it's actually text, or it might look like text, but it's actually a number. And Excel might miss it in a formula, or it might apply it in a weird way. So it's important that we have a good understanding as to what format the text is in. The way it works is, if a formula, we use the t function to test the text. And if the result of the text is not text, then the result is a blank. If the value is text, then the text is the result of the function. So for example, if we go in t on this cell here, it's going to come out as the same function, which means it is text. However, if we use the function over here and it comes out blank, it means it's not text. So nothing too special there. So we can also use the text function to convert a value into text. So if we just go text C4 and then convert it to a certain text, it'll no longer be reflected as a number. You can also do it vice versa for the value. So value is a means of converting text to a number. If you have a long stretch of text like this, if you just type in equals value, you're going to get an error because it's not going to find the error in there. But you can combine this with various different functions like mid, substitute, search, find to actually extract the value within there and use it as a value in equation. So if I do times 5, this will now work. Of course, the easiest scenario is if you've just got something that's been exported out of your system, which is your accounting or your payroll software, and it won't actually let you sum it up. When you do equals sum, it was not recognizing the value. That obviously doesn't work right there, but if that can sometimes be the case, this is the most common use of the value formula, in my opinion, is just converting what isn't formatted as values into a value so you can actually use it and sum it up and use it in formulas, etc. But that's everything that we need to go through for using text functions in terms of understanding why we need them, what are the functions to actually change the case in Excel functions, how do we combine two separate fields of text, so for example first name and last name into a full name, and how do we actually extract that when it's dynamic using the left and right. So for example, we want to take the first name, which is X characters to the left, or right from the X characters to the right. And also, how do you do it when it's dynamic, in that we don't know how long it is, so we can use a combination of find and left or and so forth. We also looked at the mid function, how we could potentially use that to replace a longer right and find function. We used the len function as a clever way of using figuring out how many characters from the left the first name was. We discussed the substitute as a replacement for find and replace, and we discussed converting text to value and value to text, including the use of the t function to test whether data is actually text or not. So, thank you for attending our video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one on different types of functions which allow you to test for errors. So they're called information functions. So I'll see you then.